My name is Agnes Vertes. Today's date is June 22nd, 2010, and I am interviewing Judy Altmann for the Historical Society of Fairfield County. And Judy lives at 77 Prospect Street in Stamford, Connecticut. Good morning, Judy. Today we are going to talk about your life. Tell me about your background.
I come from Czechoslovakia, from a small town of 15,000 inhabitants, out of which a third was of Jewish religion. It was a very, very lovely country and a lovely place. We had a democracy such as the United States at the time after 1918 to 1939. My father was a very well-educated person. He had smicha, he could have been a rabbi, but he chose to be a businessman. We had a general store, and we lived about 6 kilometers out of the town. I'm one of 6 children, three boys and 3 women, 3 girls. We had a very, what you would call in this country, a very comfortable middle class people. We weren't fabulously rich, but we were very, very comfortable. Our schooling was wonderful, and just a wonderful country.
Can you tell me the names of your parents?
My father's name was Herman Bohorochaner, very long name. I spell it to you, Bohorodscanerova. When I came to this country at the boat, at Ellis Island, they said, the first thing you do, young lady, is change your name, which I did. And my mother's name was Rose. She was the only one that was living, she and my aunt, one of my aunts, was living in Czechoslovakia. The rest of the family moved to the United States in 1918, including my grandmother.
Now, when were you born?
I was born October 10, 1924.
In what city?
Jasina. The name of the city is Jasina. Jasina.
Tell me a little bit about your schooling.
We had 2 types of schools. We had a Czech school and a Russian school. Of course, most Jewish people went to the Czech schools. I went up to the 8th, up to Polgari, the 8 years. And that's when we stopped and we could no longer go to school. I would have gone to Munkac to the Hebrew Gymnasium, but that was the end of that.
Now, what happened after 1918?
Prior to 1918, that whole region belongs to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. In 1918, it was given to the Czechs, and it became a republic. And the life was absolutely wonderful. We had all the freedom we needed. There was no discrimination. Schooling was free. It was just a wonderful way of living.
Did you, at that point, experience any discrimination?
Hardly none. I never saw any discrimination at all. If there was any anti-Semitism, it was by the Ruthenian, by the peasants, who were very primitive and very Catholic, and they still believed that the Jews killed Christ and all that. But the Czechs, none whatsoever.
Where were you during World War II?
During World War II, unfortunately, we were occupied by the Hungarians. When Hitler occupied Czechoslovakia, it was divided in 3 parts. The Sudeten part, which was annexed to Germany immediately. Then there was the Czech part that the Germans occupied. The Slovak part, they didn't need to occupy it because Hlinka was a great friend of Hitler. And then there was the Carpato Ukraine, which that's where my part of this belonged to. And we were occupied by we were handed over to Hungarians who were allies to the Germans. After the occupation, our life has changed drastically because any man from the age of 18 to 45 was drafted to slave labor camp. Businesses were not taken away completely, but they put in a Hungarian commissar, or whatever they call him, who was there with my father as well, but the proceeds from the business went to the Hungarian government. Schools were no longer, Jewish children could not go to higher schools, or any schools for that matter. Anybody that could afford to hire a private teacher, which my father did, and we gathered all the children from the area, and we got a meager education beyond our schooling.
And what happened when finally the Germans occupied that part of the country too?
That was the saddest. Well, prior to that, our life was very difficult. In fact, in my hometown of Jasina, the Ukrainians wanted to take over the part of Carpato, Ukraine. So that lasted one day, that regime lasted one day. And on that day, they had a list which Jews are going to be hung on the Hovela. Jasina had two large mountains. It was Hovela and Pietros. It was the highest mountains in that region next to the Tatry. On that part, they were going to hang quite a few Jews, and my mother was one of them. For the reason because my father had a business and a lot of people owed him money. They did not pay, so they claimed that my mother was the one that asked for the money, and she was supposed to be hung among many other Jewish people. Lucky that regime lasted only one day. Klochurak was supposed to be the president.
Keep going. Okay.
So tell me what happened to your mother.
My mother was fortunate to escape that calamity. However, what comes later you will hear.
Tell me about your experiences during the Holocaust.
One morning, we were woken up at 6 in the morning. There were 2 gendarmes and 2 SS men. They told us we have a half hour, take all our money, all our jewels, and come. We walked down to town, which was 6 kilometers. We were told to get to the cemetery, which was up on a hill. There we were for the whole week. We were allowed to go home once to get more money and more jewels. It will save our life. After a week on the cemetery without shelter, we were taken to the train. We were taken to a town called Martisolko in Hungary. There we were in a ghetto for 4 weeks with many, many thousands of people. After 4 weeks in Martisolko, we were taken to the railroad. At this point, we were pushed in 60 to 70 people in a cattle car. It took a long time till they gathered all the people from that ghetto, closed the doors with an iron bar, and we finally started moving. They gave us 1 kettle of water and 1 to use as bathroom. The 4 days that it took to get to our destination was the most horrific. People went berserk. They threatened us that they will kill us, to kill all of us if we don't quiet them down. We had to tie their mouth and their hands and for them to stop screaming. A person died. We had no place where to put the body. A woman was giving birth. It was the most horrible 4 days of my life. Until one morning, it was a beautiful sunny morning, the 21st of May. I remember the day because it was my father's birthday. We were told to get out, rouse. Men in striped uniform running back and forth and looking at young girls and boys and saying 16, Tizenhot, chestnuts, in all languages. We were bewildered. We didn't know what do they mean by 16. Again, they kept saying. We asked them, where are we? They said, this is hell.
Who was with you?
My mother, my sister, my niece, my aunt, her 3 little children, my father, my uncle, my brother-in-law, my nephew. We were told to line up in a row of 5, women separate and men separate. Out came Mengele with his shiny boots and a rubber stick. He pointed to Ida, to my niece, to go to the left, to me, to go to the left. The rest of them marched on to the right. In my father's case, they told only my nephew to go to the left. The rest of them marched to the right. And as I passed my father's row, he put his hand on my head and he blessed me as he did every Friday night. And he said to me, Judy, you will live. We marched on to an enormous building. We walked up 3 steps. We came into a big room. There were chairs lined up. We were told to get undressed. We were all young girls. The oldest person might have been 30, a mother of any of these young girls. We were ashamed. There were men in striped uniforms standing behind each chair with a machine to cut our hair. We threw our clothes in a corner and we are sitting there naked, covering our parts. They cut our hair. We were told to go in. We were handed a piece of soap. We were told then to go to the room where it says bath. In our case, water came down. In our parents' case, gas. After the shower, we were handed a gray dress, no underwear, and a pair of wooden clogs. And we started marching. We marched to Birkenau. The entire camp is surrounded with barbed wire. There are towers and there are SS men with machine guns looking at us. The road is very muddy, such it was in 2010 as well, as I will tell you later. We marched and we came to Block 14. It was a huge building. We were, at this point I thought we were about 1,400, but it is unlikely that we got 1,400 into the block, seeing it now in 2010. So perhaps it was in 2 blocks we put in. We came in, we were put into koyas. We called it a koya. It was like a shelf beds. We were about 10 to 12 on each koya. The people that were fortunate, that were on top, they got fresh air. The rest of them, only their face was looking out from it's like a shelf. Only the face is looking out. Within minutes, after we were there is an alarm. It was called Blocksperre. Nobody can leave the building. Within minutes, there is the most horrific smell of burning hair and nails. I asked Olga, a Czech girl that was there already a long time, what is that horrible smell? She says, these are your parents burning. As the transport kept coming in, we went through the shower and our parents went through the gas. These Blocksperres were sometimes 3 or 4 a day, because at this point the Hungarian groups have been coming in at a very, very speed, at a great speed. Our life in Auschwitz is such. You're being woken up at 6 in the morning, and you go out and you stand Zählerpell. It's a roll call. You stand in row of 5, not in the width, but horizontal, I guess that. And you're being counted and counted again. There is no way of escaping. Either she died, so you have to drag out the body to be counted, or they just can't get together. Finally, it's called sztymuje. You hear the Polish girl who is a couple say sztymuje. That sometimes could last 1 or 2 hours, or even longer. And Birkenau can be so cold in the morning. You only have that one dress, nothing else.
What is sztymuje?
Sztymuje is correct. You stand every other day. Mengele or another SS man will come and do other selection. If he sees 2 sisters or a mother and sister, he will separate them. One is never to be seen again. They announce if there are any twins. If there are any twins, they are being taken out and they go to the hospital, which is not far from our block, and they are being treated much better. If you have your teenagers, sometimes you have a pimple on your face. If you have anything like that, you are being taken away, never to be seen again. So what we did when we were pale, we pinched our cheeks so we should have some color. If I wanted, I did not want to stand next to my niece Ida because I didn't want to be separated. So you stand in a different line, just hoping that he does not select you. After Zählerpell, you go to the bathroom. If you cannot perform within the minutes given to you, you're being beaten with a rubber stick over the bare back. If you cannot perform, period, you cannot go till the next morning, which is not a big deal, because the food intake is so meager that does not matter. After you finish with the bathroom, you're given a little bit of black water, which is coffee. Nothing all day long. In the evening, you get 1 pot of soup made out of turnip, thickened with some bread. You have no spoon. Everybody takes a sip. Until everybody had 1 sip and there is any left, you start again. The following day, you start in that same place. You get a piece of bread once a week in the beginning. You can eat it up in a minute, but you hold on to it because you're afraid there is no food the next day. Many people developed scurvy, pain in the gums. Ida did, my niece Ida. Sometimes we were taken away to go to work. At this point, they gave us a white kerchief, and we were called the Fehérkendes, which means the white kerchief group. We went to the railroad to do selection from the transports as they kept coming in. The suitcases, the shoes, dresses, and we were watched very carefully because sometimes there was money in or gold pieces. The SS women and SS men were watching us that we should put the money into a box and select the dresses with the dresses, the shoes with the shoes. And it was great. We loved that because if we found a cookie, we were able, if you wanted watch, to eat it, or a piece of sugar, or a piece of bread. It was wonderful. We wanted that very much. Occasionally, we were also taken out of the camp to dig, to work on the field, and we were digging, but not too often, unfortunately. The hygiene was good. We were taken to the shower every week, but the big trepidation, are we going into the shower where water will come or where the gas will? If he selected too many people, very often a group never returned.
Who selected too many people?
Mengele, or whoever was doing the selection as the transports came in. When we came in, there was no tattoo. Many of the groups, as they came in, the selected people for work were taken to a side. They were asked their name, the country of origin, and supposedly that list was given to the World Red Cross, just in case. So the rumors were that the people with a tattoo have a better choice to survive than us who did not.
So you were in Auschwitz, and where did you go next?
Well, we were in Auschwitz 6 weeks. And one day we were told to go to the shower. When we came out of the shower, we were handed a blanket. How wonderful a blanket. We were taken to the railroad, and we were sent, we were put into a regular train, and we went to town of Gelsenkirchen. That's in West Germany. There we lived in a tent out of town, and we went to work every single day. We already had the blanket. The blanket acted as a poncho during the day and a blanket at night. And as we walked to work, I heard the Germans say, "Die sind Leute von einer Hirnanstalt." These are people from an insane asylum. How I wanted to tell them, no, we are victims of your regime, not of an insane asylum. But you don't speak to anybody. There's an SS woman and man on each side. You work very hard. You build bunkers, you build buildings, you build roads, you build houses. You work extremely hard. And you have, besides the SS men and women watching over you, you have the Organtot. That was the army, the German army in a different uniform. So whatever the SS men didn't harass us enough, they did the other part.
Was there anything special that happened in Gelsenkirchen?
Gelsenkirchen, we were bombed very often. Once a bomb came down, several of our girls from my hometown were killed. One lost her leg, and she, by miracle, I don't know how she did survive. I have no idea, because after many months in Gelsenkirchen, a part of us had to move on. We went to Essen, and the other group, I don't know where they went. So I don't know, her name was Kaminerova. She did survive, and she lived in Prague, but I never spoke to her to find out how she was able to survive with one leg, because that is incredible. All right, in Gelsenkirchen, the head of a capo, one of the capos, happened to be from Jasina. Her name was Neuwirth Onosh. And she was a girlfriend of my brother. So every time she dished out the soup, she gave me a little bit more or a little deeper, maybe a potato came in. Or the food in Gelsenkirchen was a bit better. We each had already a dish, we had a spoon, we had a bowl of soup every night, a potato, and every day, most of the time, a piece of bread, sometimes every other day. So it wasn't sufficient to be satisfied, but it wasn't as bad as in Birkenau.
You went on to Essen, you mentioned.
After many months, we went to Essen. In Essen, we worked for Krupp in the ammunition factory. Again, day shift and night shift, which we did both in Gelsenkirchen and in Essen. The day shift was bearable, but the nights were bitter cold. It was so cold, and the Germans were working, some of Germans were working as well. If they were nice, they let us warm our hands under, but most of the time they chased us away. We worked in that factory. I worked with a piece of iron, put it into a burning oven, and take out the hot iron, handed it over to a German guy. What happened to me, we lived again. Our tents were bombed, Sometimes we moved into to barracks where before us there were Italian prisoners of war. We were so happy. That was a bed for two of us. We were overjoyed until at night when we turned off the light and the bed bugs were eating us alive. So we got out of bed and we slept on the floor because it was terrible. But that didn't last long because that was bombed as well. So we were moving from one place. At one time we had no shelter and we found a table. So as long as we had our head under the table was great. So we were about 5 people under that table, and there was one woman, Nellie. She was such a miserable person. I said, Nellie, turn around. No way. Because if she didn't turn around, none of us could turn around. She wouldn't turn around. She lived to be 100. She lived in Israel, but as miserable as she was in camp. Anyway, sorry to digress. In Essen, what happened to me, a piece of iron before it fell on my left wrist, and it broke. Anybody that can no longer work is being sent back, either to whatever exterminating camp. There were quite a few pregnant women, there were quite a few very sick girls, and the next day was a transport to go back to go to Auschwitz. That's what Erika told me. In the middle of the night, somebody poked me on the shoulder and said, "Komm du Kleine." This was S's woman Erika. She called me Kleine. She takes me to the hospital in her little car, and they put a cast on. I said, "Why do I need a cast on? I'm going away tomorrow to Auschwitz." She said, "Don't ask questions." On the way back from the hospital, she stopped off at Krupp, and she sees the foreman, Mr. Miller, and she asked him to give him a letter that she needs me because I speak many languages, and the work that has to be done, I tell the girl in whatever language she speaks, the work is being done there. He gave her a letter. She handed it over to Obersturmführer Rück, and I was saved. She has to go to work, which was no problem. I went to work with a cast. But the worst part of, at this point, our hygiene was nil. We did not have we didn't change our dress. That's all we had, that one dress. We were ridden with lice. The lice crawled into the cast and they were eaten up. So at the end, when we were just skeletons, the skin was, when they took off the cast, the skin was eaten up by the lice. We were there for many months in Essen. Many people died. They just couldn't bear the hunger and the work.
Where did you go from Essen?
In Essen, after many, many months, the Allies kept coming closer. We could even hear it already, the cannons. So we were starting the death march. And it was literally a death march because if there was a mother and daughter and one could no longer walk, we had to tear the one that could still walk away, which was a physical impossibility. One of them did not want to leave the other one to die alone. We started off with 65 and we arrived with 54. The rest of them died on that death march. We finally arrived, we passed through many camps, Bochum, Buchenwald, many men's camps. They were in worse shape than we girls were. We finally arrived in Bergen-Belsen. Anybody that survived Bergen-Belsen will live forever. It was the most horrific camp you can imagine. Seeing it now, 65 years later, I will tell you about it. It made a terrific impression. Bodies all over, mountains and mountains of bodies. Hygiene, none. Defecation wherever you stepped. Food, very seldom. Every other day, sometimes every third day, a bowl of soup. If you want a drop of water, You stand in line and you're being pushed after one drop because the girls want another, she wants a drop of water too. You talk to your friend, within minutes she's dead. I talk to Helen and I speak to her and she's gone, within minutes. It was the most horrible thing. I have pictures to show how you sit there and talk and the dead bodies are all around you. We are so hungry that what we do, we cook. So we make up all kinds of recipes, hoping by talking about food that you will have a little satisfaction of saturation or something in your stomach. There were days that no SS man was seen, so we are delighted. So we run to the place where they kept their food, and not knowing that there were civilians there, and they started shooting at us. 2 cousins of mine were killed that day. Incidentally, I said, I didn't tell you that 22 members of my family were killed the day we arrived in Auschwitz. The last few days in Bergen-Belsen, there was a Familienlager not far from us. There were people from Holland and from France. They were better off because they were allowed to get Red Cross packages in. Sometimes it was barricaded with a big wall. Sometimes they would throw a little something. So what we did, we stood near that gate very often, hoping that somebody will throw a piece of something. There was once, the SS woman announced, if there is anybody that is willing to take the bodies and carry them to the mass grave, will earn a bowl of soup. My niece Ida was jaundiced already, and she said, Judy, if I could only have a morsel of food before I die. I got another girl from my hometown, and we started dragging the bodies. Bodies can be so heavy because they're all bloated. The stomach is so big. The hands and the legs are very skinny. And we dragged those bodies to the mass grave. And I saw those mass graves, showed it to my son Howard now. So we worked all day long, that girl, and we dragged those bodies. We covered after the mass grave is full. There were others that were doing that. We covered the grave, and we wait for our dish. She should give us a bowl of soup, and you hope that she'll go deep, so maybe a little more thickened soup would come in. I finally was able to get for Ida and for me a bowl of soup. It was a very, very well-earned bowl of soup. Until one morning, we see soldiers in different uniforms. And these were the British. They said, "You are free." What a wonderful, wonderful word to hear. You are free. They gave us food. They should have given us milk or soup or something light, but no, they gave us anything, cans of sardines, cans of meat. Many people died the next day because their stomach was all shrunk. I was still able to walk around. Ida was nowhere to be seen. I thought she was dead, and they carried her body away. I spoke English, so they asked me, it was Captain Paul. He said, "Could you hold on another little bit, because there are people dying and we want to know their names and the country they come from, so we can say they died on the first day of liberation." I was able to do that yet for a day or so, until I myself collapsed. I woke up about 2 or 3 weeks later, and who was in my room but my niece Ida and one of my cousins, Sophie.
So what happened when the British soldiers came into the camp?
When they came into the camp, they were so wonderful. They couldn't believe what they saw. And they were and as a matter of fact, what they did, subsequently, they gathered the German people, they made the German people bury the bodies that they saw. And there was a proviant, a place where they kept all their food, the Germans. And there was a lot of bread there, and that bread was poisoned.
How did you know that?
They told us about it, or some people ate it and they died. I don't remember that part.
Okay. Now, what gave you the strength to survive?
That is a question I'm being asked when I speak in all the schools. Most of the people ask the question. Perhaps the thought that my father said, Judy, you will live. And there were times that I felt at the end of it. I said, no, Papa said I'll make it. Papa said I will live. And perhaps these words kept me. There were days that I said, dear God, are you there? How could you watch it? Yet the sun was out the next morning and you said, yes, I want to make yet another day. We literally bargained from day to day. We bargained from, I have a denyik, I have when you write in every day, what do you call it? Tagesbuch. What do you
A diary.
Oh, a diary. I remember it in German, but not a diary. After the war, after I was liberated, I was very sick. I had pleurisy with exudate with water on both lungs. I had typhoid, black spots all over your body. I was very sick. And then I wrote in Czech, of course, I said, oh, dear God, now that I made it, let me at least one more day till I find out whether any of my brothers are alive. And then the next day I begged for another day. So I kept bargaining with him all the time.
Where did you go after liberation?
After liberation, there were thousands of survivors. So they had a choice, either to return back to your native country or stay in Germany in a DP camp. But there was a Count, Volker Bernadotte, he was a Swedish Count, and he invited thousands of survivors to go to Sweden. I chose to do that. My niece, Ida, chose to go back home to Czechoslovakia, hoping that she will find her brother. Unfortunately, Iju, that was his name, was killed 2 days before liberation by stealing some food from a German farmer. After we were taken care of physically, yet in Germany, they made the German doctors that were killing us before the liberation to take care of us. And it treated us. There was no penicillin yet, there was no antibiotics, so it was a long way. Finally, the ones that chose to go to Sweden, we went to Lübeck, and from Lübeck we went to Denmark, and from Denmark to Sweden. We came to Helsingborg, we were put into a quarantine. We were there for 4 weeks. People came to look at us like in a zoo. They didn't want us mingling because they were afraid that we were bringing some sickness. They were taking all the clothes that after the liberation, we got used clothes from England, from America. It was fine, it was clean, and we had an underwear, we had a dress or a skirt, whatever. But there they took that away again, and they disinfected us completely and gave us new clothes, this time new clothes, and food galore, whatever we wanted. And then we had a choice. After we recovered, you could stay in the camp, you could go to work, or you could go to school. I chose to go to school. I went to Göteborg, and I went to a school. I learned designing and technical writing, that's my profession, and I learned another language. And was in Sweden for 2 years. I started speaking in Sweden already, in schools and in churches, no synagogues. And Finally, I got my papers to the United States. I had one of my brothers here, and came to the United States in 1948.
So, how did you get to the United States, and where did you end up living when you got here?
When I came to the United States, my brother lived in the Bronx, Rochambeau Avenue. When I was in camp, after liberation, I wrote letters to my brother. However, I thought that all over the United States is Brooklyn. So I wrote 3133 Rochambeau Avenue, Brooklyn. But it was in the Bronx he lived. Naturally, he never got the letters. Finally, through a English soldier, he was able, through the British Red Cross to the American Red Cross, they found Bernard, and he was able to send me packages and papers. It was a reunion by mail. I came, I lived with my brother in the Bronx. He had at that point he had a one-bedroom apartment with 3 children, the 2 of them and me. It was cramped, but it was wonderful to be with family. I couldn't believe it. The day I came, he picked me up, and my sister-in-law was giving birth to her 3rd child. So he took me to my aunts. I had Aunt Bertha and Aunt Ethel, and Uncle Sal. Uncle Charlie had died, and my grandma was still alive. So I come in and I say, oh, I greeted my aunt. Oh my God, the greener, she knows how to speak English, can you believe it? They couldn't believe that somebody could come and speak English already. Anyway, I came to visit Grandma in an old age home, and Grandma says, oh, Rose, you came. Rissa, she thought it was my mother. I said, no, Baba, it is not my mommy. I didn't tell her what happened to Mom.
So, after the horrible experiences in the Holocaust, how difficult was it to adjust to life in the U.S.?
Well, I was already prepared to civilization in Sweden. So it wasn't just coming out of the camp directly to the United States. After we came to Sweden, we couldn't believe that there is people that could be so friendly. We couldn't believe it. We thought there's got to be something wrong. How could they be friendly? And they were wonderful. The Swedish people were very, very friendly. In the beginning, they're a bit cold. But once you get a Swedish person as a friend, you have them forever. So coming to the United States, I was already prepared. In fact, when I came and I went through the slums, I said to Bernard, my God, this is America? I was very disappointed because there was a Swedish family that wanted to adopt me. I said, well, I'm Jewish. She said, that's okay, you can practice your religion whatever you want, but stay, we have no children, we want you. But I said, no, I have to go to my family. Anyway, so when I came, I wanted to start working, of course. I couldn't get a job as a designer. So my brother says, all right, you can be a salesperson. So I look in the paper, there's a job in a liquor store. Okay, so I come to the liquor store, I dressed up, and he says, do you have any experience in liquor store? Yes, I do. My father had a liquor store. He did. I mean, we sold liquor. So he gives me a bottle, and he said, what is this? I said, this is a pint. He says, my dear lady, you don't have experience. But anyway, I worked as a sales lady in the dress shop for a few years. For not really, just 1 year. I met my husband. It was the first summer in New York, and it was extremely hot and humid. I go to the doctor and I said, doctor, there's got to be something wrong. I must be sick. He says, no, Judy, you are not used to humidity. Go to the country. Go on vacation. I said, go on vacation? I have $50 in my pocket. How could I go? He said, don't you have any relatives? So I called my uncle. I said, uncle, could you lend me $100? I'll pay it off slowly. And I went to the country. I went to Fleischmann's, and I met my husband. And 6 months later, we were married.
Where did you live after you were married?
After we were married, we lived in the Bronx on Marshall Parkway, 51 West Marshall Parkway. At this point, I was still working as a sales lady because I still couldn't get a job as a designer. I had 2 children. 1952, Howard was born. In 1955, Steve was born. And I was going to work. My father-in-law was watching the children. My husband was a chemist. He worked for American Cyanamide. And we had a wonderful, wonderful life, a wonderful marriage. Anything, after the camp, you are so grateful for anything. I lived in a two and a half room apartment. We lived, and everybody says, well, aren't you cramped? The children don't have a room. So what? It's beautiful, it's wonderful. You see, what we had was unbelievable. We appreciated everything. I still, till today, cannot throw out a piece of bread. If you go to my oven, you can see small pieces of bread sitting there. I cannot throw out anything.
How did you end up in Stanford?
Subsequently, I did find a job as a designer. I worked for Bernard Ullman for many years, Botany, Bear Brand. Then I changed and I worked for Coates & Clark on 430 Park Avenue. And the company moved to Stanford. So they relocated me, and we came to Stanford.
In what capacity did you work for them?
I was a designer. I was a technical writer and designer, head of the design studio.
Now, when you came to Stanford, as a survivor, what kind of reception did you get from the Jewish community?
A bit on the cold side. Some people invited me and they asked me to speak a little bit about it. Their questions was, why didn't you run away? Why did you wait for that? The most unbelievable question they asked, and they didn't want to know much until later on. People became a little more aware and they wanted to hear. I got a much warmer reception from non-Jews than from Jews, unfortunately. But later on, I was really, as you will hear, I was really well received later on, but not in the beginning.
How was life for you at the beginning in Stanford?
Well, I was, the first 6 months as they relocated us, I still commuted to New York because the design studio was still on Park Avenue. So it was really hectic to travel all that. But later when I came, I did not, while going to business, and taking care of I had my father-in-law living with me for 11 years. After my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law came and lived with us. So I had my 2 children, my husband and my father-in-law. So I had my hands full. But even then, I was, after Marshall Parkway, we moved to Yonkers, and there I was already had a little more time. I joined the B'nai B'rith, and I was part of the ADL committee. So I did that as a something for the community.
So from Yonkers you moved to Stanford.
From
Where did you live in Stanford at that time?
We lived in 44 Strawberry Hill, and then we moved here. In this building, that's the only 2 places we lived.
That was also an apartment?
Yes, that was also an apartment. At that point, Howard was already at Princeton, and Steve was already graduated, and he had his own job.
What was Stanford like when you moved here?
It was not as built up as now. It was 1975, but it was, I loved it. I loved Stanford right away. I joined Agudat Shalom at that point, and I loved Stanford. I still do. My husband wanted to move to New Jersey because his friends were there, but I didn't want to do that.
What organizations are you active in?
Well, I am vice president of, I was president of Brandeis University Women's Committee in 1984. I belonged to Agudat Shalom. I'm vice president of Holocaust Child Survivor of Connecticut. What else? I'm very active in these organizations. I'll tell you all about the activities I do. Do you want me to tell you about Brandeis, what I do?
Yes, you can tell me about Brandeis and how about some other things that you do.
I do a lot of speaking for schools, high schools, middle schools, churches, synagogues. Last year I spoke in 12. This night, 2009, I spoke in 12 schools. The year before, it was something like 20. Every year, I speak in many, many places. I have thousands and thousands of letters and scrolls and things to show what I'm doing. Very well received.
Do you do any other activities in the community?
Yes, from Jewish Family Service. I visit people in old age homes. I visited one man together with Judy Pompa, two of us. We went for 10 years. His name was Velvo. What was his last name? I forgot his last name. I have pictures with him, how I feed him. Every Friday we went there. We brought him chicken soup, we brought him chicken as long as he could eat it. Then later on we ground it up with applesauce, with potato pancakes, with a complete Shabbat dinner with challah. And he said the Kiddush. We stayed there for 2 hours. After that we went to see a few Jewish women and we lit the candles. There was one woman that did not speak at all for many years. She had Alzheimer. We came in with the candles and we lit the candles, and lucky her daughter-in-law was there the same day, otherwise they wouldn't have believed it. As we said the prayer, her mouth started moving. And we did that every Friday for 10 years. I have the pictures to show you. We do other things. We visit, I did for several years, I went to visit people in houses that I call it assisted living, help them with their correspondence, with their bank balance, with things, take them for a little walk. We did that. I did that for many years. What else?
Well, other than speaking in schools, do you have any other functions in the school?
Yes, I am a reading partner for the last 11 years. I go every week on Tuesday from 9 to 10 or 10 to 11, depends on the year. I get 2 children and help them to learn how to read. I have pictures to show you of the children with us.
Tell me about your recent experiences on the March of the Living. First of all, why did you decide to go?
I was approached whether I would go, and I gave it a thought for about 5 minutes, and I said yes, I am going. But I didn't want to tell my children. I was afraid. They were going to say, Mom, are you out of your mind? Well, I held it back. I didn't tell anybody. So I finally told Steve, my younger son. I said, Steve, sit down. I'm going to Birkenau and I'm going to Bergen-Belsen. No, I didn't know about Bergen-Belsen yet. He said, Mom, you're not going, period. I said, I'm going, Steve. He calls me back 10 minutes later. Debbie says, you're not going. I said, I am going. Well, P.S., I said, where can I light a candle for my parents but there? Oh, well, Mom, if you put it that way, maybe you should go. But I'm going too. And so is Debbie, and so is Juliet. And then I called my older son. I said, Howard, I'm going. He says, I think that's a great idea. So anyway, so I went.
But why did you decide? What was the reasoning behind it?
First of all, I wanted to show to whom, in my mind, I wanted to show I made it. You see, you did not achieve what you wanted. And when I walked to the Israeli flag in Birkenau, I did not let go of that flag. I said to myself, whoever you are and wherever you are, I'm here. And you did not destroy us. And when 10,000 young people walked, there was a satisfaction beyond compare.
So tell me about the march.
Well, we marched there, we came into Krakow, and we came Saturday, we marched there just to see, that's before the Yom HaShoah day, so we walked. It was very, very trying. The barracks, to see all the things, the hair, to see all the, it takes your heart out. You are really, really depressed. But the following, you see what happened in Auschwitz itself. This was not an exterminating camp. It was predominantly a camp for POWs. But later on, in Birkenau, they had the gas chambers and the crematorium. But on and then we went to see all these places. And when we came into the gas chambers, you could see the scratches of people with their nails in the whatever minutes they had, how they reacted. There were, in some of them, there were the spreads of blood was on the wall yet. It was a trying thing, but I wouldn't have changed it for anything, not to be there.
How did that affect you?
It was very depressing. I didn't sleep for several nights afterwards. But again, I said, many people, as many, in almost every child should go to see it, because to tell those son of a gun that say that the Holocaust didn't exist, they should see it, and more and more people should see it. When I came back and I speak in schools, I had about 6 schools I spoke after I came back, and I told them about it. They said, they're predominantly non-Jews. They said, we want to go. We want to see it.
So you were in Birkenau for Yom HaShoah?
Yes.
And then where did you go?
After that, we went to many camps. We went to Treblinka, to Majdanek, to Sobibor, to Belzec. Now, into many, many synagogues we saw. Some of them are still beautiful, some of them were refurbished, and everything was very, very, it was sad, and it was good to see it, to refresh people's memory. And for those children, the 70 children, for them to see it, no way. I will read letters to you what the students say, that no matter how many times you read it, but seeing it yourself is something else. Until we come to Belzec. This was the most horrible thing for me. As we came into the camp of Belzec, it was the rails come in directly into the camp. As they brought the people in from different parts. As we came in on 2 buses, 2 separate buses, the entire group went to the left, but I felt to go to the right. I cannot explain why. And there was one girl that she was always after me. She sort of wanted to protect me in case I fall or anything. She wanted to be after me. And she was keeping quite a distance after me. And as I walked to the left, there are stones. Prague, Budapest, Berlin, all the cities all over. Until I come to a stone called Mikulice. This was the town where my sister lived. She was married and she was married to a Polish guy, and she moved to Poland, and the town where she lived was called Mikulicin. All these years, we did not know where she was. After liberation, I checked Yad Vashem, I checked every part, I'm still looking every time, where did the town of Mikulicin, I have never heard of anybody, a survivor from there, or even where they were killed. While we were still home, my mother was able to send food with a peasant to my sister. One day, the peasant comes back, and he said to my parents, I regret very much I could not deliver the food to Charlotte, but I witnessed her execution. But he didn't tell us where, so we did not know. But when I saw that, I almost collapsed. I screamed. So finally, we got to the rest of the group. There is the 70 students, there are three rabbis, 2 doctors, the whole staff, and they tried to comfort me. But what they did, they literally did a funeral for her. They mentioned the name of the husband and the Yiddish name in Charlotte, and her 3-year-old little girl and her 7-year-old boy. And what she did is she literally got a funeral. But what they did, the brutality of it, when the transports came in, they made them undress right there near the trains. The women with the children by their hand and the men separate. And they made them walk about 1 kilometer up. You have to see that camp to see it. And when they asked, where are we going? They said, you're going to Himmelstrasse. You're going to Heaven Street. And as they came up, there was a gas chamber. And they used phosgen and difosgen. They used the gases that they used in the First World War. They didn't use the gas that they used in Birkenau. And then they buried them in mass graves. And at the end of when it came closer to the end of the war, he did not want to have these mass graves sitting there. So he made the Jewish men, prisoners, open the mass graves and had them burned. And the Poles complained that the fat of the bodies of the people is settling on their window, and they are complaining about it. This was the most horrible. The next camp that was as traumatic as where all the ashes, I don't remember which one it was. I have it written down, but I don't remember. All the ashes under a dome.
Was it Majdanek?
I think it was Majdanek, yeah. All the ashes are under a dome, and there are little lights, and the children were lighting the lights. You couldn't stop the children crying. It was impossible to stop them. Everybody was just... Oh, I forgot to mention, when we were in Krakow, we went to see Schindler's factory. They were making pots, and well, every one of us wished we would have been in Schindler's group.
Now, you mentioned Majdanek. How did that camp look to you?
You know, we saw so many that I remember those horrific things, but I don't, you know, I have to refresh my memory really to look at the pictures again.
Now, this was a time which also has a historical point. Tell me about that, how it affected your group.
As we came into Poland, we came 2 days before. The group came in Friday. Saturday morning, we were going. Saturday there was not much activity except going into a temple. We went into a temple in Krakow, a very beautiful temple, and Rabbi Hammerman was conducting the service. And in the middle of it, he stopped. And he says, there is some very bad news. The president, his wife, and 96 people were killed in an airplane crash. They were going to Russia. What was the name of the town? And the plane crashed. It was a very foggy morning, and the plane crashed, and all of them were killed. Of course, the Stimmung, what is the Stimmung? The atmosphere in Poland was very, very sad. There wasn't a smile, not that they smiled before, but there was a very sad, everybody was walking around crying and all. He wasn't all that loved, the president, but still it was a tragedy. Naturally, we had to keep our children quiet as well because we didn't want to make waves. We also were asked for a black mark, so we had it, carried it on our groups, on our flags and all that, to show our sympathy with the Polish people.
Did you encounter any anti-Semitism in Poland?
Yes, I didn't see a friendly person. Regardless of their tragedy, they just were not friendly. Even though we bring in so much money with every year the people coming there due to the camps, they don't show any friendliness. In fact, in all the places where we go to the synagogues, there are Polish women standing outside. Since I spoke the language and I was the translator, every one of them, my mother saved 2 or 3 Jews. Every one of them saved a few Jews. Had they done that, where did the 6 million come from being killed there? You really didn't see any sympathy from them. You didn't.
Now from there, did you go to Bergen-Belsen?
Yes. I must tell you, in Auschwitz, I was interviewed by the Polish press. And in Polish, they were asking me questions and all that. But I didn't hear it because I left. The kids, the whole group went to Israel, and I went to Bergen-Belsen because just about a few days before we left for the trip, I got a call from Bergen-Belsen that they invited me to be there for the 65th commemoration of liberation of Bergen-Belsen. So they said I can bring a companion, so I chose to bring my oldest son, Howard. So he came directly to Hanover, and I came to Frankfurt, and then with a smaller plane to Hanover. And they had us in a very, very elegant hotel. They invited, I think it was about 120 people, and they each could bring either a daughter or a son, and they also invited people that were born there, because the people that were in the DP camps, they got married, and they had children, and those children were invited there as well. Which their children at this point, they are 65 years old, or 64 years old. They're not, anyway. So they had a very, very nice program. But coming in to the camp, 65 years later, was a different story. It is like a beautiful cemetery, if there is such a thing to say that a cemetery can be beautiful. It is green lawns with trees, and the mass graves are there. They are elevated, and they are there. There is a huge obelisk. There is a wall, a cement wall, written with all the nationalities that died there. Well, Bergen-Belsen was not an exterminating camp. It was a concentration camp. But prior to that, it was more for POWs. until 1942, it was strictly for POWs from different nationalities. So as you walk in, I couldn't recognize it. Howard says, "Mom, do you recognize it?" I said, "No, except for the graves. That's the only thing." The barracks were burned down immediately after we were liberated because they were infested with sickness and lice. Everything was burned down. So there is a very huge building, which I'll show you in a book, at the museum. Very modern done. And all the memorabilia, I can't pronounce it, is built in the floor or on the wall. It's done very, very well. And the interviews of people with their stories is all in the wall. It's done very, very nicely. Of course, then there is a huge cross that's for the POWs and for the non-Jewish people that died there. And then there is a Jewish monument, which was the day of the commemoration. They brought us there with buses every single day. There was a program every single day for us. They took us to, that was very interesting too. They took us where the transports came in with the wagons. And some of the people were killed, but they were shot or hung, but there was no gas chambers or crematoriums. In the end, you wish there would have been some crematoriums to burn all these bodies, but there was not. Anyway, the day of the commemoration was very interesting. One vice president was supposed to be with the Polish president on the way, and he had to be somewhere. So he spoke in Bergen-Belsen too. And there was Rabbi Lau from Israel. There were, I should have prepared all these names. It was a very, very festive day in pictures and from newspapers. I was asked to speak a few words there as well.
Now, you didn't end up going to Israel. Why?
I didn't end up because I was caught with a volcano eruption, so I could not leave anywhere. In fact, at one time they said there will be a plane, but it'll cost $5,000 to go, either to Israel or home, forget it. So I called my grandnephew in Prague. He came, he picked us up, and we went to Prague, and we spent 5 days in Prague, and then we were able to go home. So I was not able to go to Israel, much to my regret.
Now, think about it. What was the most terrifying experience you remember in your life? Take a moment to think about it.
The most terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Losing my parents in Auschwitz.
Can you tell me about the happiest day in your life?
There were so many of them. So many happy occasions. Being liberated, having children, the weddings of my children. So many of them, so many happy things, and I'm here. There's so many things I'm grateful for.
You have a very varied experience, and especially your Holocaust experience. How did that change you?
I think it changed me for the better, because I don't think I was ever a spoiled child. I don't think I was. Being the sixth child in the family, I was very much pampered, but I was not spoiled. And what taught me a lesson to appreciate life and to appreciate every moment and give back. Try to do good for all the things that I went through.
Well, thank you very much.
All the things I got from Brandeis for the mitzvah thing. These are all tributes to me. You need light? Should I make light?
Okay.
I was the keynote speaker at the Capitol in Hartford.
And the one with the stars around it. We're going through all the things that Judy has been acknowledged for. Brandeis University. Tell me about the one that I'm looking at right now.
That's the Merkaz. That's two girls adopted me.
And this, the Merkaz is where?
Excuse me?
Where is
in
it?
Bridgeport.
In Bridgeport.
No, that was in Westport, I think.
Oh, that's, wait a minute. No, Merkaz is in Bridgeport.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is the banner I carried in Birkenau with me all the time. And after I was finished, the children wrote opinion about me and how they found me.
Can you read some of them?
Okay, and that was my granddaughter. Dear Mom, oh no, that was my son. Dear Mom, I'm honored to be your son. I've been very much, what is it? Fondly, Steve. Judy, thank you for sharing this trip. It is important for survivors to go to tell their story. Thank you so much for going on this trip with us, Jessie. Judy, you made every step of the march more meaningful. Thank you for your strength and what a smile. Love, Alisa.
Okay, that's beautiful. And this honor is?
Yeah, you read it, I can. Oh.
20 years of building providers of senior happiness, honoring Harry Bennett, Thursday, October 28, 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Rockrimmon Country Club. A Posh Lifetime Achievement Award will be presented to Judy Altmann. Cocktails, lavish hors d'oeuvres, dessert, silent auction. JC.
Go ahead, tell us what this is.
Okay. I was invited to speak to Miss Porter's school. That's the school that Jackie Kennedy went. I spoke to 300 students, and they were very, very impressed. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. And of course, I was picked up by a limo and brought home with a dinner. And afterwards, I got that in the mail, signed by many, many children with their saying. Can you read some of them? I haven't got my glasses. Thanks so much for your message. Was very interesting. Forever grateful. If you had an amazing tell, I truly appreciate your coming to share it with us. Agnes, read a few.
Thank you so much for your beautiful and sad speech. It was so moving and such a once in a lifetime experience for me that I will remember forever. Caroline Goddard.
Thank you so much for your stories and visit. They were truly, well, I can't read that.
This
and
is
put many things in perspective. Thank you again, Jen Bibel.
Yeah. Judy, you inspired me to never give up. I cannot tell you how much I admire your strength, your kindness, your forgiveness, and your faith. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We will not forget, but you help us to forgive. Sarah Greensbach.
That's